They get to spend their old age in poverty. Do you feel good about this? Now, this can also happen, where there is a real danger. But the problem is it can happen where there's not a danger. It's not a requirement that there be a danger for them to seize. So we've got some problem, and all of this happens in secrecy. Now, my legal advice needs to change. If the Senate passes this bill, my legal advice has to change. Because now, the company approached me under the old law, and I said, well, they're wrong at law. If they want to push it, let's go to court and let a court decide between you and them, and it would be fair, and they can survive. Under the new law, I know as soon as Health Canada drops off that order demanding a recall for every product they've sold in 13 years, that the company is not going to survive. Okay, it's just not going to survive. So the company is done. But what I can do, because lawyers, sometimes we're damage control, right? What I can do is I can at least try to keep the owners and managers from being personally bankrupted. And how do I do that? I get them to destroy their stock before Health Canada asks them to, shut their business down, jump as high as Health Canada says, so that they have no reason to charge you criminally. You've done everything you can do. Now, do you see why this would be so dangerous if Bill C-51 came back? And now it's the health food manufacturer, the health food store, and the manager's calling and saying, I have a binding order. I'm not just thinking, can I save the business? I have to think, can I prevent the managers and owners from being personally destroyed? See, it changes the groundwork just so dramatically. And it kind of reminds me of medieval times. The soldiers would come out of the castle, and I think people learned not to resist. Well, that's what the rule of law does. So, same thing here. Health Canada comes and takes control over your business without court supervision, and the lawyers have to adapt and kind of, okay, well, let's not resist. So that at least you're not bankrupted personally. That's how it works, okay? So, it's quite dangerous. And so if I ask you the rhetorical question, is this safe? Well, no, it's not safe, is it? Now, have any of you read The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich von Hayek? Oh, okay, nobody. Usually there's one or two in the audience. I want to read you a quote. He's just basically an economist of the Austrian school. And he wrote in The Road to Serfdom, the system of private property is the most important guarantee of freedom, not only for those who own property, but scarcely less for those who don't. And just his point is, whether you own property or not, if you live in a society that doesn't honor property rights, basically you're not going to have freedom. And you can think through history about how true that is, but it does kind of, I guess I'm just trying to drive home one of the most dangerous things we can do as a society is to allow the rule of law to be undermined. Okay? It's one of the most dangerous things we can do. And my generation is basically guilty of being absolutely complacent and allowing this type of thing to happen because we don't think about freedom. We were actually taught, I was taught by the state, by the media, that this is an incredibly free country, that we're absolutely protected, and it wouldn't have even dawned to me or my fellow generation, that we have to pay attention. But we need to start thinking about freedom. And what is freedom? I want to share with you the Black's Law Dictionary definition of freedom, because it's actually quite precious. According to the Black's Law Dictionary, freedom is the state of being free, liberty, self-determination, absence of restraint, and my favorite, the opposite of slavery. Isn't that neat? But when you think about it, that's what freedom is, isn't it? It's the opposite of slavery. Now, we can't be completely free. I mean, we can't. If you want to be completely free, you have to go live in the woods somewhere. But if we're going to live together, we have to give up some freedoms. We can't beat each other up. We can't kill each other. We can't take each other's property. Only the state can do that. That was a joke, but anyway. Right? So, because you would think the state would have to give up that freedom. But if you actually, go home and get out a pen and a piece of paper and ask yourself, well, what freedoms do I absolutely are necessary for us to give up to live together? It's very few. And yet, over the last, 20, 30 years, the state, and it's accelerating, they just passed more and more laws basically criminalizing things that we were free to do beforehand.
Right.
And it's becoming all pervasive, almost every area of our life, not just in the area of food and natural health products, but every area. And it becomes particularly offensive when it's being done for safety, because it encroaches upon, our ability to basically have sovereignty over our own bodies. How we're going to nourish ourselves, how we're going to treat ourselves when we face a health crisis. I'm particularly upset at this time over what's happening with raw milk. Now, raw milk is not a Health Canada issue. It's done by the provinces. But for whatever reason, like you guys are in Ontario and you're kind of okay for a while, because, Michael Smith had his victory at the trial level, and the states appealed, and there's kind of a period where the state really isn't being aggressive here in Ontario, but in the other provinces are being very aggressive. About 6 weeks ago, I got a call from a lady in BC who, has a very small herd of cows that are all jointly owned in a cow share program. And the state had actually got an injunction where the court ordered her not to milk her cows. Now, if you know about, that'd be like saying, ordering you not to urinate. I mean, you can't not. And you can't not milk the cows. You can't stop just full stop. It's just, it would be cruel. So she obviously violated that order, not passing the milk on to the owners of the cows, but she kept milking the cows for humanitarian reasons. And so then she was being brought to court by the state for contempt of court. Okay? So, so that's why she was calling me, as the state's after me now, I'm facing contempt of court proceedings. And, at the same time, we've got in Wildwood, Alberta, Eric and Judith being attacked by the Alberta health authorities. And it was particularly offensive because of to what lengths the state was going to, actually getting physical with them, to seize a couple of liters of raw milk. So the first time it got physical, as opposed to just visiting the farm, is Judith is taking her van to drop off some milk at one of the herd owners, and she's in a private driveway, and two health inspectors come up and they want to seize this milk, and she doesn't want them to do that. So they remove her physically from the van, so they can go in and seize a couple of liters of raw milk. And then a month later, October 25th, 2010, a day that will live in Canadian history, the great raw milk takedown. And this is, your tax dollars at work. Literally, it was a sting operation. So somebody phones them and says, hey, I want to join your cow share program. Like, they got 2 cows. And, okay, we're going to have to sign a contract where you buy into the herd, and then after you do that, you can start accessing the milk. So they had arranged to meet at a public street, and she had a couple of liters of milk for him if he joined the program. And he's going through the contract, and he won't sign it. And this is kind of odd, like, you've approached us. And then while this is happening, 3 inspectors come, and they want to seize the milk. So that's why I think it's a sting. We don't know for sure that person was an inspector, but it's sure suspicious, isn't it? So in same thing, the one inspector was grabbing her arm and trying to pull her out of the van, wouldn't let her close the door. And they only stopped because somebody she knew was walking by, and she started calling for help, and that embarrassed them. But her 4-year-old daughter's in the van witnessing the state manhandling her mother. And so now she wants to protect her daughter from seeing this. So now she gets her daughter out of the van, gets it into a house where she knows the people, and comes back, and she's trying to deal with them. But she's explained to me on the phone, I'm so upset I actually had to leave. So she just goes into a nearby church to settle down. Like, how you can you can imagine. You've got 3 inspectors there. They've already tried to manhandle you, and they were going to seize your property. It's upsetting. Well, after she wasn't quite calmed down. It's just she said, well, the police are here, and the people in the church told her the police are here now too, and you better go outside and deal with them. It's 6:30 at night. It's dark. She comes outside. The police have boxed in her van with the lights going, and she says it looked like, like a crystal meth bust. And yes, the state took her milk.